Hey everybody, how's it going? So in order to understand this video, it's going to be important that you check out the first part of this. This was one that I did a few months ago, an important message for Ben Sass. It's only about 10 minutes. And in this video, I read an email that I received that was forwarded to a bunch of senators in Nebraska. It was talking about the link between John Deere and China when it came to technology sharing with the Chinese government and how this presented a security risk because this is for a lot of agricultural equipment that is utilized in America for farming and to ensure that the nation's food supply stays, available for everybody, and how this could be hacked and that there was a serious security issue here. So one of the whistleblowers spoke to Mr. Krebs. Krebs got shit-canned because he was talking about the election and all that drama last year, and how he was just kind of, poking him so that they would go back to looking at this. Now, I wanted to follow up on this because there were people in the comments of that video who had said, I think this is overblown, this is not really that big a security risk, and blah. This is an interesting article that just came out, and I wasn't able to talk about it. I was sworn to secrecy until the article came out, but now that it came out, I can talk about it. One of the people who was involved in this article is one of the people who helped me with lobbying for right to repair in Nebraska in 2017. Great guy. Interesting article. Bugs allowed hackers to dox John Deere tractor owners. A security researcher found 2 bugs that allowed him to find customers who had purchased John Deere tractors or equipment. A pair of bugs in John Deere's apps and website could have allowed hackers to find and download the personal data of all owners of the company's farming vehicles and equipment, according to a security researcher who found the vulnerabilities. There is no evidence that hackers exploited these flaws. The researcher, who goes by Sick Codes, reported them to John Deere on April 12th and 13th, and the company fixed one of the bugs 3 days later. The company fixed the second bug on Wednesday, according to the researcher. Before the fixes, the vulnerabilities, if exploited, would have exposed personal data about John Deere's customers, including their physical address. I could download the data of every owner of every single John Deere tractor in the world, Sick Codes, who did the research along with Kevin Kenny and Willie Cade, told Motherboard in a phone call. In his blog post, however, they made clear that only Deere equipment with specific technical features would have shown up. Older John Deere farm devices had less or no information about them, which again really just kind of drives home why there is so much demand for older tractors instead of new ones in this industry. What I mean by devices is actually $1 million machinery that automates farming through GPS, auto steer, and things like that, they wrote. At first, I was looking up ancient tractors. I was submitting almost 30-year-old equipment to the API. Which models would have lots of electronics and telemetry? I need to be looking up the newest models. Sick Codes explained that on newer farm equipment, he was able to see the vehicle or equipment owner's name, their physical address, the equipment's unique ID, and its VIN, the identifying code for a specific car. How do you think farmers would feel knowing that John Deere was leaking their full name, company name, address, line 1, line 2, etc., or when the subscription started for that device? He said. Since John Deere was not rate limiting those VIN lookups either, an attacker could have easily looked up every single John Deere vehicle over a day or two, effectively duplicating the entire database. Sick Codes said he could iterate and brute force all VIN numbers in the database as they were sequential, according to him. Deere explained that not all devices were effective. A John Deere spokesperson confirmed the existence of the vulnerabilities, but downplayed their impact. We were recently made aware of 2 code misconfigurations in separate online applications, the spokesperson said in an email. We immediately investigated and the misconfigurations were remediated. Neither misconfiguration enabled access to customer accounts, dealer accounts, or sensitive personal information. Sick Code said that the claim that the bugs did not expose customer information is a lie. I could see sensitive personal identifying information, he said in response to John Deere's statement. Video viewed by Motherboard shows specific addresses associated with equipment. The fact that they're trying to discredit me just shows how incompetent they are. A recent Forbes article dug into John Deere's history, or lack thereof, of software vulnerabilities. One thing the company doesn't have? A software vulnerability in any of its products, at least one that the company is disclosed to the public, the author wrote in Forbes. That's not the case anymore. Sick Codes said that the first vulnerability allowed anyone to list all usernames on the John Deere web portal. A remote unauthenticated attacker can simply remove the cookie from the original request and replay an unlimited volume of username availability requests, the researcher wrote in the vulnerability report, which he shared with Motherboard. An unauthenticated remote attacker can enumerate an organization's account username by submitting permutations of a target with no observable rate limit. The second flaw could be used in tandem with the first to dox all John Deere's owners. The exploit leveraged John Deere's operations Notification Center mobile app for Android and iOS, as well as on its corresponding web version. Anyone with an API cookie, which could be obtained by just signing up for the app, which did not require proof of owning a John Deere vehicle, could expose any vehicle or equipment owner's name, physical address, equipment GUID, which is the permanent equipment ID, and the status of whether the terminal is remotely accessible via the RDA protocol via the Vehicle Identification Number API, according to the vulnerability report SICK sent to John Deere. SICK complained that the process to disclose these vulnerabilities was lackluster as John Deere was slow to respond. And this is an interesting article. The reason I find it interesting is because one of the arguments against right to repair that gets mentioned all the time, security and safety. Security, 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 security. I mean, we're talking about many devices that are running Windows CE. Not all the modern ones, but many of the I've seen tractors that run Windows CE. And there's even in the modern ones, you have many issues with security. When there was the right to repair automotive bill in Massachusetts that was on the ballot last year, one of the things that you heard over and over again were, do you want, an abusive spouse to be able to know where you are all the time or be able to hack into this type of stuff and find your address? That's not what we were even talking about. We were talking about being able to get access to vehicle diagnostic codes, and they were talking about how this is going to ruin security. The reality is that with no right to repair bill existing, someone could look up the address of every single customer. So when you hear that it affects security, it's really important to point to the fact that they're not secure as is. And this has nothing to do with right to repair. This has nothing to do with right to repair and everything to do with the fact that they use fundamentally insecure systems. And it was interesting to read through some of the messages back and forth. I don't really understand all of this stuff or how he was able to figure out and do what he did. But it was interesting. I'll just read some of it to you. It says, let's see here. I'm going to scroll down and... As a security researcher, this seemed like an awesome attack vector to start looking at with the intention of obviously reporting the vulnerabilities to John Deere if I found any. So I signed up with a free developer account, as most good and bad hackers would do. At that time, I did not know the difference between a combine harvester and a tractor. They were all tractors to me. Limitless username lookups. I left the account for a few weeks to do some other paid work, and when I came back to try to find a vulnerability or two, I had forgotten whether or not I had created an account. As I started typing, the API was making username lookups every time I typed a letter on the sign-up page. Seemed out of the ordinary that a username lookup would check every time you enter a letter. Usually when things are out of the ordinary, that means I'm getting warmer. I copied the request as a CURL and began removing cookies one by one until the request failed. And then he just has a link to some picture. To my surprise, the API worked without any cookies. Then there is a giant section of code that I don't understand. This indicated to me that I could potentially submit any number of usernames. Moreover, uppercase and lowercase were treated the same. So for a neat proof of concept, I submitted the Fortune 1000 companies. I looked on GitHub for something like a big CSV or TSV of the Fortune 500. Then found this, which worked perfectly. Specifically this file, a list of big companies that would be likely to have John Deere accounts. And here's the proof of concept. So he downloaded the list, then there's a bunch of commands that I don't understand because I'm a dumbass. And I submitted the 1,000 queries in just over a minute or two and then checked the results. 192 out of the 1,000 companies. That surprised me. I was able to submit 1,000 username lookups completely unauthenticated. Almost 20% of the companies had accounts. The first issue was discovered within just a few minutes of me returning back to the security research on the John Deere portal. I immediately prepared a report to be submitted to the specified email in their terms of service. And there is a picture of the email. The report was submitted on March 25th, and I requested a CVE at the same time. Probably shouldn't have submitted the CVE as it was subsequently rejected since the website didn't have any version numbers or anything in its site-specific vulnerability. Before I submit a CVE, I usually look for similar CVEs in different products, just to be sure it would fit the bill. Secondly, I submitted a request on their disclosure form. Since I was using a developer account, I followed the rules at the very bottom of their term and conditions. Funnily, as I write this today, that terms and conditions page is now gone. I archived a cache here for transparency. These are the terms I was acting under. Also here, they are verbatim, given there was no vulnerability disclosure program. And then there's an exhibit about best practices, security audits, and some terms of service stuff that's highly boring. Given the URL was corporate IT security consulting, it didn't really stand out at first as the right form. So I submitted the request to global security request in markdown format, as I couldn't upload any files. I also emailed a copy report to API support, which didn't exactly look like a security-oriented email address. I'm not the judge or jury, but I did exactly what I was told to do. Dead ends. About 4 days later, I thought I might chase up the report, just in case neither the email or the form was received. Seeing as they had an active Twitter account, I decided to privately DM them on Twitter. This was their response. Hey there, can you share the report with us at socialmedia@johndeere.com and we'll ensure it's shared with our internal teams? Thanks. He says, usually sending vulnerabilities to social media team is not ideal. But then again, I am giving them the benefit of the doubt, so I politely asked for the security team's contact details. Do you have a more secure destination? It's not appropriate to send security vulnerabilities to a group email. But of course, again, right to repair is where the real security issues lie. This is where things get awkward. They didn't have a HackerOne, so it was disclosure assistance page. So I CC'd in HackerOne, who confirmed they did not have a program at the time. They did not have a private or public program. The next day, April 1st, the engineering manager, cybersecurity operations, replied to my earlier form request and asked that I send the report again. I obliged. Digging deeper. John Deere is a massive software component, and I only scratched the login page. The actual software portal is massive, lots of agricultural software integrations, but I needed to know what I was looking at. I wanted to see how they interact with the actual tractors and other implements. At this stage, I needed to find someone who knew a lot about tractors. This would help me skip the learning curve because I literally knew nothing. That's when I found this article, in American Conservative, Nothing Breaks Down Like a Deere. I reached out to the author. And then he links a few videos that made it make sense. Secondly, I wanted to find this mysterious Ukrainian software that apparently farmers have been running. He suggested I get in contact with one of the guys in the Vice video about hacking tractors. That's when I met Kevin Kenny, an engineer. Here's Kevin on video. He blew my mind about how computerized these tractors, combines, and harvesters really were. That's where I'm up to. And as you can see, then there's just some stuff here that I can't really show you because I don't want to get even anywhere remotely into revealing people's addresses or personal data that he claims that John Deere claims that nobody was able to get. So there's a message here. John Deere considers the security of our systems and the data within them a top priority. We were recently made aware of 2 code misconfigurations in a separate online applications. We immediately investigated and the misconfigurations were remediated. Neither misconfiguration enabled access to customer accounts, dealer accounts, or sensitive personal information. And he says they lied, pure effing lies. And then he has a laughing emoji. So this was pretty interesting. And again, one of the pieces that take home here is when you hear that right to repair is this giant security risk that we're going to be getting hacked from every country and this, that, and the other, just realize how poor the security implementation is right now. Well-secured systems will have 0 vulnerabilities from me wanting to be able to solder a charging chip on a motherboard, from me being able to replace a USB-C mux, from me being able to see what the value of a resistor is. Security is about creating systems that are secure and then having a place where people can email you and contact you if they can showcase that your system leaks in people's information without having to contact you repeatedly, only to get something back that says, yeah, send it to our social media team. It's always deflection. It's always deflection. When you hear about the potential for hacking and potential for security, this, that, and the other, they don't have secure systems. They don't. It's nothing to do with us. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Link the article as well. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video.